So I'm Jessica Browers. I'm from down in Freeborn County. I've been with the dog project since third grade and before. So with the showmanship rules, what is happening with the showmanship rules is we are actually dividing the current rule book that everybody had, or the old rule book, I should say, and we're dividing that into a rule book, and we're dividing it into a guidebook. As like a reference, as a guide, and kind of a more in-depth guide is what's happening. And we totally took the rule portion out. So that's where the new rules came from, per se. They're not really new. They're just, like I said, they're just a divided packet now. So the main things that have changed in there is just the class description of who can be a novice, who can be an open. And then we have added a third class called excellent. Okay, so in the novice, I'm sure you guys have read that that's for members who have earned less than any of the following. So novice members are 2 blue ribbons in novice 4-H dog showmanship at a county or state level, have earned less than 2 champion ribbons equivalent in another dog organization, or have earned less than a combination of 1 4-H dog novice showmanship blue ribbon and 1 champion ribbon equivalent in another dog organization. And that's just to clarify, a 4-H'er gets a blue ribbon at county and state show in the same year. That's just one, it counts as only 1 blue ribbon towards the year. So you can't get 1 blue ribbon at county and 1 at state and count towards your 2. Okay, so your novice kids can now stay in novice for a longer period of time. Okay, so, and then once they've earned those, it goes up into the open. Okay, so that's the open kids. Basically, that's where you can probably stay the longest. And remember, counties can still divide their open classes into their juniors and seniors. That's a county decision. So all your open kids don't have to compete against each other if you want to drop it into that age division at your county level. Okay. So the open kids is so they can stay in this level until they have earned any of the following. So 3 grand or reserve champions in the open class at the state show, or at the county show, with 4 or more youth in the class. Okay, so there has to be 4 or more youth in that class for it to count towards that one. And then they can earn 2 grand or reserve champions at the Minnesota 4-H state dog show in the open class. And then there's also the 3 champion ribbon equivalent in another dog organization. And that starts after they complete the novice class. Okay, so they can't take their novice ones and count that towards their open. Once you get into open, you totally start over with your counts. And then it's the 2 grand or reserve champions in the open class at the county show with 4 more youth, and either 1 grand or reserve in the open class at state, or 1 champion ribbon equivalent in another dog organization. Or the other factor is 1 grand or reserve champion in the open class at the state dog show, and 1 champion ribbon equivalent in another dog organization. Okay, so then that moves us into where these kids go after they've earned that. And that is where they go into what we now consider the excellent class. And that is for 4-H'ers who are ineligible for that novice or the open dog showmanship. And this is where they can stay indefinitely. Okay, so is there any questions on those classes, the class divisions? Okay, so it was
Jessica, can you go back and cover if they can go backwards?
Oh, yes, hold on. So I'll answer this question first about the Fun Match Invitational blue ribbons. They do not count towards any of this. It has to be a county or a state dog show. And like I said before, those have to be in different years. Okay. And then what Loretta was talking about whether you can go backwards or not, is also covered. So if a handler and or county trainer feel the team has a higher skill level, a handler may move up 1 level. If a handler does choose to move up, they may not move back in subsequent years. Okay. And Loretta, do you want to keep? And basically we allow, like, if they're in the excellent class, if they get a different dog, they can move down to the open class, but they have to do it the same year they get that new dog. It can't be they show in that excellent class for a year and then decide they didn't do well and then they drop back down. It has to be done the year that they get that new dog. And with the other dog organizations, for anybody who shows in other dog organizations, we don't start counting those until they enter 3rd grade. Okay, so it has to be when they actually become an actual 4-H'er when that count starts as well.
And then there was a question on the chat. It said, so the kids must earn champions to move out of open.
Yes, they have to earn those grander reserves. Mm-hmm.
Although we did say that if they and the trainer feel they could move up, they have that option.
Right.
So if you have someone who feels like they want to move into that excellent class, that's between them and the trainer to decide.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Confused about the new dog rule, since showmanship is based on the handler. Why, if they get a new dog, are they allowed to go down?
They're allowed to go down because of the fact that that new dog has never been probably used in showmanship. So that's where it's a new dog factor, just like in obedience. When they get a new dog, the handler is allowed to start in that in that beginner level. They're not allowed to go down foundation, but they're allowed to go back to beginner because they got a new dog. Okay, so we're allowing them a chance to basically get that new dog trained for their showmanship aspect.
So basically they could not go, if they were at excellent, they could move back to open. They wouldn't move from open back down to novice, just for
Correct.
clarification's sake.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that only applies if they're in the excellent class. If they're in the open class already and they get a new dog, they cannot move back down to novice.
And then there's a question that says, other than the title, how will open and excellent differ?
They won't per se be any different than what they are between novice and open. This is basically just allowing more of the open kids to have a chance in kind of putting those kids that excel to a new competition level, just like we did for advanced agility or excellent rally. This just gives them another step for those kids that want that extra challenge for them. So in all reality, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference between open and excellent, but I mean, just like the difference between novice and open, I mean, it can be a little bit more challenging for them. You know, you may see more of the T pattern. You may see more of the reverse triangle pattern come out. You may see some of those more challenging questions for knowledge, more challenging handling skills. Some of those things may come out for that excellent class participants, pretty much.
And you have more competition between your members, your participants in the class.
Okay, so in the chat there was so if the kids have earned grand and reserves in the past, can they start out this year in excellent? That is totally up to the trainer and the youth. If they choose that they want to try out that excellent level, they can. As long as they have met the criteria described in the rule book, they can definitely go ahead and start out in that excellent class. Okay. For 4-Hers who have been in showmanship already, how do we transition to the new classes? That's kind of the similar thing. If they've earned the descriptions, then they can be placed in that excellent class. If they've earn to go up to that open class, they can go to that open class. If they meet the criteria to stay in that novice class, they can stay in that novice class another year. So, but it does all fall down to, yes, it is a trainer discretion if, you know, if they per se don't meet the criteria, but show it the ability to do it. What if they were in the project, then didn't have a dog, so that's several years off from the project, so they have to start at the very beginning. So if they were in the project, then didn't have a dog, you basically, if they took a couple years off from the project, they don't have to start at the very beginning. They start off where they left off. So like say they were in the open class before and they took several years off and they got a different dog, they would start in that open class. They wouldn't go back down to novice because they do have the skills to show in that open. So they would stay in that open area. Now, if they meet the criteria to go up to that excellent class, that's kind of a decision that they make. They may, since they have a new dog, they can start in that open class. But if they want that extra challenge, they can try the excellent class, knowing that they can't go back down if they choose to show in that class.
So if a member has one blue ribbon and was moved up to open because of the former rules, they can move back down to novice because they haven't earned the 2 blue ribbons?
Correct. So basically, they have not met the criteria to start in that open class this year.
Unless they've already been in open, then they cannot move back down to novice. If they've already shown in open and gotten a blue ribbon at least, then they shouldn't be able to move back down to novice.
Right, right. Yeah,
But
so
for
if they've already
someone
shown
who got
in
a
that
blue
open
last year,
class,
yeah.
yeah. But if they've only showed in novice and got a blue ribbon and haven't shown in that open class yet, then they can stay in that novice class for another year to get that second blue ribbon to move up to that open.
Wait and open when they moved up.
Do they answer?
So,
I don't know
so if they didn't, okay, so if they were in the novice class, won a blue ribbon, moved up to open, showed in that class, but didn't get a blue ribbon, they can move back down to the novice level?
Technically, I would say yes, because of the fact that they have not successfully completed that open class with a blue ribbon. So it'd be just like in obedience, that if you don't, you know, earn that blue ribbon, then you per se don't move up the next year. If that makes sense.
My concern is just the ones that have, you know, that showed in the novice class, got a blue ribbon, under the old guidelines were then moved up to the open level and didn't, you know, may have showed at that level, but didn't win a blue ribbon. They're going to be allowed to move back down to the novice level until they win another blue ribbon.
Correct, because if they, since they have not earned that blue ribbon, they more than likely did not or do not have the skills to move up to what we are now considering the open class. So that's where we're giving these kids more of an advantage to learn and be more successful by competing in that novice class for another year, or however long it takes to get that another blue ribbon. Because if they're not getting a blue ribbon up in the open, then they're not ready to be up there. But that's still all up to a trainer and handler discretion. If they think they're ready to show up in open, or that they should be up and open and want the challenge of open, they can be up and open.
Okay, one of the questions on chat is for small counties that never have 4 or more youth in a class, how will open members ever transition to excellent?
That's a good question. So that's where it becomes a trainer and handler decision. If they want to choose to have that challenge of moving up to that excellent class, they can choose to move up to that excellent class, but they have to know that they cannot move back down if they successfully compete in that excellent class after the first year.
They also move up if they get grander reserve at state.
Yep.
Okay, another question. With the new guidebooks coming out, will there be the information about the reverse triangle and other possible items at the excellent level? I just would not want the kids surprised while in the ring with something that they have never practiced.
So with the only thing that would be new is the reverse triangle, and we are working on that as a showmanship committee to get out. So that would be the only thing that would not be covered in what is considered the old reference book now out there. That's the only thing that would not be out there already, which we are working on getting something out for the reverse triangle in particular. Okay. But other than that, the guidebook is already out there. What's happening with the guidebook is that it's basically being cleaned up and gone through and reorganized, but most of the material is staying the same. It's just being kind of reworded, expanded on to make it more clear for the youth, for the trainers. But the material in itself isn't particularly changing. We're updating, the breeds that have come out, the presentation for those breeds and all that type of stuff. So the content as a whole isn't changing except for this reverse triangle. And the reverse triangle per se isn't going to be something that's probably asked a whole lot of, except for possibly up at, state or your tiebreaker type things. So we will be getting something out for that reverse triangle until we can get the whole guidebook out as a whole. So but the guidebook, as you guys all know, there's a lot of material in the guidebook that we're trying to go through and sift through and get done. So
if I recall correctly, there were a couple of videos posted on the reverse triangle.
Correct. Those are also out there as well. Yes. And those were made based off of the reverse triangle information that we'll be putting out.
Okay, a comment from the chat. At least for this year, they should be able to move back, especially if they have only shown an open for 1 year. Is that correct?
So if they have not earned a blue ribbon and open, they can move back per se to that novice class. If they have earned a blue ribbon and open, they stay in open.
So now I guess if anyone has questions about, how to do table, how to do some of the patterns, now is the time to ask.
Yep, so I'll just touch one last thing on the rules. So
okay,
a lot of it, like the bait section, just make sure that the toys that make noise are not allowed. We cannot have those in the ring at all. That's just a total distraction. And the only other thing that has been added to the rules, and this is to benefit the youth and the trainers, is you will see that it is broken down into deductions. There has been a section for deductions added of the minor, major, and the extremes. The team is excused in an automatic white ribbon. So that was released with the rules like I said, as a benefit to the youth and the trainers to give them, share with them, what they're kind of going to be judging on and whatnot, besides what's on the score sheets already.
Just remember that a judge has the option to change that. So just because it's a minor, if the youth makes a huge mistake, The judge may make it a more critical, and then conversely, if it's listed as a major, but it was really minor mistake that they made in the ring, they might just call that a minor. Those are just basic guidelines, not set rules.
Yeah. So is there any questions on that part that was added for the deduction aspect of it?
What's the anticipated timeline for getting out the guidelines?
Well, with the guidelines, we were going to try to have them out by May at the PDC, get them approved at the May PDC meeting. However, with the extent of what we need to go through still, and we're working on getting actual updated presentation with Wayne, the guy that works with us with AKC. We are going to get, what we're going to do is we're going to get the reverse triangle aspect out there. And then the actual guidebook, since we're not changing the actual content per se of it, we're just reorganizing it and cleaning it up. It probably will not be out until November, to be honest. I worked on it until midnight the other night, and it didn't.
Not even a dent.
It didn't make a dent, to be honest. Like I said, the content's not changing, but we're trying to add in, pictures of like presentation stuff. We're trying to add in, leash pictures and, all this other stuff to make it clear and to help the youth out the best we can, and make it a true, really nice guidebook. And to do that, it's just going to take more time than what we anticipated. So, like I said, the old ones are still out there as a reference. But to get a true, review on it from the Showmanship Committee, from the PDC, we're not going to have it out by May. It's just not going to be out. So like I said, the only thing that needs to be included is that reverse triangle aspect. And we will get something put out for that, and get that approved by the PDC, and we'll get it posted online. And that's kind of where it's going to stand until we can get this whole guidebook as a whole reviewed. So like I said, the content isn't per se changing. It's just being cleaned up and being put more youth and trainer friendly is what it's happening. So, and these showmanship things haven't been touched since 2004. So if that gives you an indication of what we're trying to update and put into place with the AKC aspect of it. So.
Okay, so let's turn it over now to you participants. What kind of questions do you have about, training, maybe the patterns, training the table, just general questions and how to help the kids do well in showmanship? So just pipe up and, talk.
One of the main issues that we have is the distancing, keeping enough room between dogs. Does anybody have any simple suggestions on how to get the kids to understand that they need to stay apart from each other?
Are you talking about like the 3 feet and the 8 feet while gating?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we do is we make it kind of visual for them. So we give them an example that there needs to be a whole dog. And then you got to leave room for the tail. Because the kids don't know what 3 feet is per se. So we try to make it equivalent to something that they can visually see. So do you have a dog's length between you and the person in front of you? And then when we do group gating wise, it's, do you have basically 3 dogs between you and the person in front of you? And a lot of that is just constantly reminding them and asking them until they kind of get it in their head that they are that many feet away. I don't know if and that's how we do it. So it's, like I said, the whole aspect of them having to visualize a dog. And of course, we don't use like the small dogs. We use, like a golden retriever or a lab. And that's kind of where we set our standard there. So.
Okay,
Yeah,
a question on chat is, it says for the table, is it still an option and not a requirement? And when teaching the table, do you want toes at the end of the table or just on the table?
So the table is still a complete option, and that's a safety thing. So you don't have to show on the table. Honestly, a lot of the young youth, they're not strong enough or tall enough to lift their dogs up on the table. So until they can kind of meet that requirement of being able to safely lift and place their dog on the table, I don't have them show on the table. So yes, it is a complete option. And they can let the judges know that they choose not to show on the table. That's completely fine. My only recommendation is down the road, once they do meet those criteria and they per se don't, they need to advance. So when they get into like the upper open, like age-wise, they're in the open, senior open, like they should be showing on the table as a challenge to themselves of advancing their skills. That's the kind of the differentiation of what I use as an option. But it is not a requirement. If you have a dog that's not going to behave, that that's not quite trained or comfortable on the table, and it's not going to be able to be shown to the best of its ability, then I would wait and continue to train and work on it. And then as soon as it's trained and, you can present it on the table, that's when I would start presenting it on the table in the ring. So it'd be more of a training thing versus an actual showing thing, but it is completely optional in the ring.
So to clarify, if the judge shows up and has the table there and the students or the handler and dog are not ready, they just need to inform the judge that they're not able
Correct.
to show on the table?
Correct. They do not choose it, regardless of whether the table is in the ring or not. They do not have to show on the table. If the judge is to question whether they're going to use it or not, the youth just says, I don't show on the table, or I choose not to use the table. And that's all.
As a judge, I always ask when we go in the ring and do original walking, after they've done their gating around and they're stacking their dog, I always ask the participants, are you using the table? So it's never a forced issue. It's always up to them to decide, and they can walk in the ring and say, not today, even though they've practiced on it every day. That's up to them at the time they're showing.
Mm-hmm. And then it says, when teaching the table, do you want toes at the end of the table or just on the table? So in the table guidebook, it does say that, let me read this correctly. The front feet are placed near the center front edge of the table. The front feet, toes of the dog should be at the edge of the table, but not on the metal edging around the table. Okay. So basically that's your goal, to get the dog to that front center aspect of the table with those front feet or the toes at that edge. Okay. Some dogs don't like it. So it does take a lot of training. I guess Loretta might be able to, as a judge, and say more, or my mom is also here too. But I mean, that's a challenge of showing on the table is, you want to get to that point where they're the center front by that edge, but not on the edge. And that's a safety thing as well. Dogs don't like to be on that front edge, but you have to work up to it.
And the youth can say, this is as close to the edge as I am able to go right now. And that's fine. If they can acknowledge it and explain why the dog isn't further, that's to their benefit. But if they put the dog in the middle and don't say anything, and you think, okay, this is where you think that they think it's supposed to be, then they haven't performed as well as the person who says, My dog can't move up to the edge of the table yet, but we're working on it.
Wondering if you should talk a little bit about courtesy turns, because I know sometimes that is always a question in showmanship is, do I have to do a courtesy turn? When do I do a courtesy turn? How do I do a courtesy turn?
Yep. So courtesy turns are kind of like the table. They are completely optional. Courtesy turns are basically designed to get your dog moving and moving away from the judge correctly. That's what their intention is. However, the only time you can get a deduction for the courtesy turn is doing it wrong. So if you don't know how to do a courtesy turn, or you can't do it correctly, that is when you would not take that option to do the courtesy turn in the ring until you have further training or are comfortable doing it. So the courtesy turn, I know there was a video put that we included in the showmanship aspect about that. The dog always has to go around you. If you go around your dog, that's when you would possibly have a deduction. Actually, not even possibly, there would be a deduction because you are completing it incorrectly. Okay, so like I said, the dog goes around you, and it is to get your dog moving away from the judge in the middle of the mat, away from the judge, in a straight line away from the judge. Okay, so it is, like I said, it's courtesy turn is optional, and there are kids that decide not to use it. However, it is to the benefit of, people with medium or larger breed dogs in particular, to get their dog into that correct speed for their breed, to use that courtesy turn to get them moving away from the judge in a straight line. So is there any questions on the courtesy turn? Like I said, there is a video that was included that we had put out there with that. Okay, there's a question on chat saying, what are some ways to teach free stacking to new handlers? A lot of that is just practice. Some youth don't always realize that they need to practice showmanship in particular, and that's where things kind of go wrong. Everybody needs to be practicing showmanship, especially if they want to get that solid, stack, that solid free stack after they come back from that pattern. A lot of that is honestly just practice. You need to start with that solid stay, but you need to be able to, use your leash to direct the dog where it needs to walk, where it needs to step per se, or your body language to get that dog to move or step a little bit. Like I said, a lot of it's just practice. I don't know if that answers the question fully. I don't know if somebody else has ways that they've done trained free stack, but I did it by consistently practicing, and learning my dog, learning my body language, and learning my leash movements and how it affected my dog. A lot of it's done with the leash or the body language.
So you mean practice outside of the training sessions?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Right. No, some of the kids, have a hard time going, why, isn't the training session enough? Why do I need to practice it at home?
No, 100% of the time. I always tell my youth that I've been doing this long enough. I've been training long enough. I showed long enough that I can tell what youth practice at home and what youth don't. And you'd be amazed at how that really can start a fire of getting them practicing at home. And it's true. You can tell who practices at home and who doesn't. So yeah, it's 100% encouraged that. And that's the thing, like showmanship kind of gets, they think that the training session's enough, and it's not. Especially when it comes to, having that solid stand after, they come back from their pattern and being able to walk around their dog.
That's the main thing. Control at the end.
That's the biggest, I mean, if they do anything for showmanship training, that's one of the biggest thing is getting that solid stand while they walk around their dog after the pattern. I mean, and stacking, I mean, most dogs don't stand in that stack solid. I mean, you have to practice all that. Like it just doesn't come even with just the weekly or how many times a week you're training. It doesn't come. So showmanship has to be practiced at home as well.
Okay, another question on the chat. How long does a lead need to be, as some kids show with short leads and others show with long leads? Is there a set length they need to have?
So for showmanship, there is not a set length you have to have. So that there is no deduction for using an obedience leash. However, when you roll it up, that's the presentation of your leash is more the bigger aspect of it. You want to be able to get that leash rolled up neat and tidy in your hand with that arm at a 90-degree angle over the top of your dog's head, and that hopefully that leash is fit all within your hand. But like we said, with safety reasons and whatnot, sometimes we have to use those thicker obedience leashes on those newer dogs, or the more exuberant dogs for safety reasons. So we work with that. The judge sees that. But you want one that's going to be able to control your dog. That's the biggest thing. But there's no per se set length. I mean, I wouldn't go out and get anything for sure over a 6-foot leash. But, if you have, if you're a short person and you have a larger breed, I mean, 2-foot leash, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So, I mean, there isn't an actual set length per se.
It needs to be folded up neatly in your hand.
Yeah, but to reiterate, the thing is it should be a length that you should be able to fold up neatly in your hand when that arm is at a 90-degree angle when you're gating your dog.
Can't do that with a 6-foot leash.
Okay, and here's another question, and I think lots of people have that. So other attendees, pop up if you have the magic answer of how to get members excited about showmanship. I know in Anoka County, that is a big thing. Our showmanship classes are very low compared to our other areas. So what's the magic answer for getting the kids excited about showmanship?
I guess in our county, we require everybody to do showmanship the first year, for sure. That is as a knowledge thing. We want them to be aware of the knowledge that they should have of owning a dog, and the responsibility of owning a dog. And then getting to know their dog even more, the breed that their dog is. And then beyond that, a lot of it is they see how excited we are about showmanship, because all of us that are training showmanship really do like showmanship. It was probably one of our favorite aspects of showing, which helps. But other than that, I mean, you have to try to make it as fun as possible for them. Showmanship can get long, it can get boring. So, any way you can make it fun, just like anything else, is the key. Whether that's, doing a trivia night for the knowledge aspect of it, or,
Making it a game,
doing
giving
something
out treats.
fun with the game pattern or the patterns, doing fun games for the patterns or anything like that. Any way you can kind of turn it into a fun game aspect versus a per se kind of a long,
And dividing it up, questions on one by one person, and
yeah. And we do divide ours up too into, part of the kids go do questions, part of the kids go do patterns, and we kind of have it in between. This doesn't per se get them excited about it per se, but we do our beginner kids obedience, and then we do our showmanship. So it's kind of a break for them after they've just done a bunch of stuff. You know, something a little bit lower key that's not as, you know, intense per se. Plus the dogs are already tired. So that kind of helps with the stacking aspect of it, of, you know, the dogs kind of being a little bit more relaxed per se. So, I mean, anytime when you can take that benefit out of it, of, you know, anything that's going to deter them or any excuse that they can have to not do showmanship, that also helps. So
Just showing the enthusiasm for it. Oh, this is so much fun.
What about what about some of you other trainers out there? What do you do to make your showmanship classes exciting and want the kids to be there?
I haven't done this.
Go ahead.
I haven't done this recently, but I used to occasionally have a stack off. Who could stack their dogs the fastest?
Yep.
As a way to make a game out of stacking, and then also improving their speed at stacking their dog.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea.
And that's not only challenging themselves, but it's, you know, it's
A fun competition.
yeah,
Yeah.
good fun.
I have to say, we don't have any trouble with students wanting to do showmanship. Yes, you're right. Our obedience classes run before our showmanship classes do, and our students and the dogs can be a little tired. So I don't always force stack the whole time. I'll do little groups, or I'll tell them to relax while I'm showing a portion, or we're moving on to a portion, but I always am very outgoing and I pump them up. Coach all the time, just lighting them up, saying they're doing a great job, just being a huge push coach, wonderful. And the more they succeed, the more I seem to light them up. They want to continue to come back. When we do learning body parts, I'll assign them a sheet. I'll bring them the sheet. I'm sorry, my students, they won't go online and run it off themselves. So I supply them with the sheet to do the body parts, and I'll say, next week, come back. We're going to have a contest of who knows all of their body parts. And then next week, I'll split them in half because of social distancing, and then I'll visit each group while they're practicing, and then I'll quiz them one-on-one. And they seem to have a really, you know, and another thing to encourage sportsmanship is to help one another. So I encourage them to help one another. So how do you remember this part of this dog? What is, I ask those youth to show the other youth what they're using to help memorize that body part, so that they're getting to know each other, and that they're a group and a team, and they're using sportsmanship. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we're always, you know, how can we help our other partner out? How are we working together to show good sportsmanship? So as a whole, our group is working together, coming down with strategies to, you know, help each other out, you know, because some dogs are easier to show in showmanship. And then you have a boisterous dog that, you know, doesn't want to stand, doesn't want to sit still. Well, what can I do? Well, then I turn it on to the students. Do you have an idea? What would you do? Do you have an idea? What would you do? Or I will give them, you know, I definitely give them my viewpoint of what to do. But then this way we have everybody's input. So in case they run into this on their own while they're practicing at home, they have that knowledge of what's working. That worked for Tommy. I'm going to try that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Use your junior leaders. They are great role models. Youth learn so well from other youth, you know, pair them up. You know, we do a lot of the junior leaders go put their dogs away for showmanship per se, and they get paired up with the younger youth, and it's that one-on-one aspect of it, because, you know, as trainers, we're only one person. We can't be with every every one of them every time. So the more that they can gain that knowledge and feel like they're being trained one-on-one, especially for showmanship that first several years, the better it is. So
would anybody suggest possibly having handlers switch dogs to see, you know, the difference between handling a big dog and a large dog so they can gain some understanding that way?
for safety reasons, I would not.
Okay.
Be it to the fact that, you know, everybody's dog's so different. Everybody's dog is reacts different to different things.
And they're also bonded.
Yeah, they're pairs for a reason. I don't think you should be switching handlers. I mean, you get somebody with a small dog that all of a sudden goes to a big dog, they're not gonna have a very good idea of what to even do with the dog, or let alone if the dog decides to take off and pull against them. That dog's gonna want to be with their handler themselves, and it's for safety reasons, I would not recommend it.
Okay. What about the ones that use a slip collar for obedience and showmanship? How can you help them? So, you know, because obedience, when they stop, the dog sets. So how do you get the dog and the handler to change the thought process if they're using the same slip collar for both obedience and showmanship?
Change of position on the neck.
Yeah, so with
Under the jaw.
with the slip collar aspect, first of all, one thing that you can do is, if it is okay with the dog and they don't need that thicker chain for control, you can get a thinner or a lighter weight slip collar for showmanship. And then not only that, your slip collar should be in a different position on the neck. Your obedience, it should sit, you know, further down. For showmanship and presentation, it should be still up behind those ears aspect, just like a showmanship lead.
Under the jawline.
Yeah, under the jawline, you know, it should be further up on the neck versus sitting further down on the dog's neck.
Totally different.
So it's like I said, the weight can be changed so they know the difference between that. But you know, take safety into consideration there. If they're a strong-willed dog, you know, you obviously don't want to put them on a lighter weight slip collar. But the position of it on the neck is going to make a difference.
And you get total different control. You get so much more control up under that jawline.
Yeah. So well, you guys can't see her, but if you put that slip collar underneath the jawline, you also have a whole different control level as well. It's a lot more control on that jawline versus further down on that neck.
Okay, another good question on the chat is, how do people typically run their training nights? In Morrison County, they do obedience and showmanship on one night, and she requires all kids to participate. Spend maybe a third of a time on showmanship, majority on obedience. Just curious how other counties run their practice night. So let's hear from the different counties. And we can sort of do it in an orderly manner.
Well, in Anoka County, this year we had to move to 2 nights. So we have our foundation and beginner on Thursday and everybody else on Tuesday. And that's because of the number of people, number of participants we have, and making sure we're in line with the 4-H protocols. We do everything in one night. We start out the first 2 weeks with just obedience, so they have that foundation of obedience. And then for rally and showmanship, we alternate weeks. And then agility, agility starts about 2 or 3 weeks after obedience. And we have the kids scheduled so that they just go from one area to the next.
So I can say in Freeborn, oh, I don't know. I can say in Freeborn County, we do have 2 separate training nights. We run our beginner, so our foundation beginner, some of our grad beginner, depending upon their experience, from 6 to 7. And then 7 to 8 is our showmanship category, where all of our kids come together, and that's where we utilize our upper youth to help those younger youth develop those showmanship skills. And then at 8 o'clock is when we start our higher level obedience classes. We do, like Denise was saying, we do start our obedience and showmanship earlier than when we start our agility, so they can get those obedience skills back in order, I guess, if you want to say that. And then our agility is totally ran on a different night. We do fit rally in with our obedience, with the agility aspects of it. We do have it set up on those nights for the kids, and then a trainer to do it. Agility nights, we start with our younger youth, our younger levels first, and then our older level classes come later. We have 3 trainers in our county. And then we also have, like I said, we have the youth helping, and we also have some of the parents helping as well. But that's basically how we run ours. I mean, granted, it's a little bit different when we first start because we have youth in sports still. The sun's not up as long. So, I mean, we do condense our training down a little bit, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, what about some of you other counties? I know Douglas County put some info on the chat line. In Anoka County, we probably have a total of 5 to 7 trainers, but we have a big program. So some strictly do agility. And then we have a youth that have been around for a while. They are either sometimes a full trainer or an assistant trainer. So we try to have, especially for our beginner and foundation kids in obedience, and I know this is showmanship, but we try to have 2 trainers in the ring with the kids at a time, just to help them.
In West Ottertail, it's been just me up to this point. My daughter graduated out of 4-H last year and has been a huge part of being an assistant junior leader up to this point, and she is coming on board to help. But I'm accommodating because I work in the same town as we do the trainings in. So I have run 2 beginner sections and 2 advanced sections on different nights, and we do everything all in one night. But like I said, I can do have done up to 4 different training sessions in a week to accommodate all my kids. So we had a very growing program prior to last year. What I'm getting now is I lost the majority of my kids last year. So I'm coming back with just a few, 3 or 4 that are returning. I had 7 that graduated out. And so that was a big loss anyway, but sounds like there's a good promise for several beginner kids. And of course I have my daughter helping this year. So as an adult trainer, so that'll be great.
The other question I have is, do people train inside or outside? I'm with Moore County, and we train outside, and we generally use overlapping times. We start at 6 o'clock with the beginner obedience, and then at 7 o'clock we have the 6:30 we have the older kids come in, and the younger ones go to showmanship, the older ones go to obedience, and then at 7 o'clock we do the agility, and we fit the rally in between the break times between the 2. And sometimes we'll have those set up beforehand so they can come a little bit early if they want to and work on the rally also. And we have currently three for certain with 2 possibility for trainers.
I guess we do all of our training outside for the most part. However, well, not currently. Our fairgrounds is still closed currently, so we don't have access to a building. But we do usually try to get nights inside as well in the building that we show in, just so the dogs can get used to it. And we're not putting them into a new environment once the show actually does come. And then of course, since we do usually have access to the inside building, if we have inclement weather outside, we can go in there, obviously. For agility, if we have inclement weather and we have access to that building, we'll switch to rally or anything that we can do inside. Totally not do it. There was a question, does everyone use matting outside? We do not use our matting outside. We just train on the grass is where we train. Just a leveled off area for the dogs to work on is all we do. We do put our mats up in the building just so the kids can get used to that matting, where to stack their dogs on that, especially for showmanship. It's big. If they can get access to that matting, use that matting at some point, or get to an invitational or anything like that, to kind of do that. So.
In Anoka County, we have the benefit of being able to use our 4-H building for training. So we do our obedience, showmanship, and rally indoors. And of course, our agility is outdoors.
All of our training is outdoors. We are not allowed in the buildings, except the week before our show. We put up mats and run through all of the exercises indoors so they know what to expect when we get to the show.
That's another thing that I know we kind of touched on with the showmanship aspect of it is, I know Tammy was talking about how, she didn't make her kids do a full presentation the whole time. And that's huge as well. So, in your class, you can allow your kids to kind of relax a little bit more and whatnot. But like Loretta was saying, you should, go through an actual what is expected of the kids, and how the flow of the showmanship ring is actually going to do, or happen, I should say. So you should be going through that aspect, which is going to take that, worry, I guess, or per se, or anxiety away from those kids, and stress of the dogs and the kids. You should run a mock class of a showmanship actual class before they even get to the show, because otherwise the kids aren't going to know what's going to be expected of them. So the more that you can, teach them the skills, but then also, I warn my kids, in the actual ring, you're going to have to stack your dog this whole time. So the dogs and the kids need to get used to stacking their dogs for that long period of time, even though that we may not do it all the time in practice. So that's another big thing is, run that mock class, one night or one evening. Usually we have an invitational in our county that we haven't been able to hold. So, before that, the week before that invitational, or that week of the invitational, we run a mock basically class for our showmanship kids. We usually allow our older kids to be intermixed with the younger kids. So those older kids can help and keep an eye on those younger kids and kind of correct them as they go. So yeah, I can't iterate enough to use your youth leaders, because they're learning as well. If they're teaching the younger youth, they're learning something. If they don't know it, then they come ask us.
They take so much pride in it.
They're learning, and they're getting their self-esteem boosted and taking pride in what they already know. And it's a win-win situation in that case. So.
Okay, there's a question about what is the preferred matting and where is the best place to get it?
I guess that would be in the guidebook. I don't know.
It talks in the obedience guidelines. There's, I think there's a good section on matting.
Yeah.
And I know
as AKC leftovers, basically, or what they got done using. AKC has to replace their matting every so many years. Like, I shouldn't say AKC, but the people that they have come in and mat their rings for their shows. They have to replace their matting every so many years. It's required. A lot of these companies just throw it away. We were fortunate enough to know some of the people that were doing this, and that's how we got our matting. They were going to throw it away, and we had to go get it. I think we had to travel a couple of states to go get it, but it was free. Mm-hmm. So that meant a lot, and we're still using some of that matting today. I mean, in our county show and up at state. Also, some of your kennel clubs have mats, and they like to replace their matting every so often. If you have some of them in your area, you can contact them and see if they're replacing any of their matting. And that's how we got some also. They replaced their matting with fatigue mats at one time, and we got all the mats from Freeborn County, a Freeborn County Kennel Club, and that's what we use up at state also. So there's many different ways you can acquire this matting. Some of it's not exactly perfect, and like some of it that we got from the companies, we had to scrub. They had mildew on them, and we had to go through them with bleach and scrub them all with a brush. But that was a small price to pay considering what the mats actually cost. Yeah. So it's several different places, but they are available.
And if you check the chat now, there's some suggestions on there also about places and how some of the other counties got their matting.
Is matting required for indoor for during the shows?
No.
Well, if they're jumping, or if it's in like an obedience or rally and they're jumping, there should at least be a couple of mats available to put under the jumps.
Yeah, for like to make it a non-skid surface.
Yeah,
that's your biggest thing. If it's a slippery floor, and of course, obviously with the joints and stuff, you don't want to be constantly on the harder surfaces. But the biggest thing is it's the safety of the dogs. But I mean. Yeah.
The matting isn't necessarily required, but what we as judges like to have is like a semblance of a mat. One year we weren't able to use our mat. We had to show in a ring where they had very, very rough cement, and it would have just chewed our mats up to pieces. So what we chose to do is we had chalk lines, and we put chalk lines down where your mats actually would have been. And then that gave the kids an idea of where they really should be having those dogs. And it helped a lot, for them to give them that visual where they actually should be.
Okay. Where I'm in Fillmore County, and so just answering some of the questions, we are just getting started. We started up the dog project last year. So we didn't have a show, but we kind of made a fun show, and we had like 4 kids that were going. So we're just getting started with everything again. I don't know how long it wasn't going, but I think it was several years. So we're trying to get it up and running again this year. So we'll see in a couple of weeks how many kids we have that are joining us this year, but so we'll be looking for resources for mats too.
Well, and of course, if you're showing outdoors or training outdoors, mats are not needed.
Sure. Yeah, and we'll be outside when we're training. I don't even know for sure where we'll be showing at the fairgrounds the week after the fair, but I don't know if we're going to be outside or inside a building. But we can kind of pick, a building that will work. I guess we'll make it work this year, and we'll just keep moving forward, I guess.
And I know there was, oops, I lost it. in the chat, there was, that they don't typically use the matting until a show. And there's a lot of counties that I think don't do it. But like I iterated before, the more you can, every once in a while during classes, and it's so beneficial for showmanship because of the fact that you want the dog, going down the center of the mat. You want the kids to be able to stack on the edge of the mat and all that type of stuff. Pick a couple nights, during your season to put out, even if it's just a mat, just put out a mat so the kids can get used to, or, designating, okay, so here's your mat, that visual of where here's the mat. What are you going to do? Because like I said, when the kids don't see that mat until they get in the ring, it's like, it's stress. They don't know what to do. And they like forget everything. So the more that you can get them introduced to that mat, the better it is. We don't put up a full ring every training night that we do put out mat. I may only put out an L pattern, just to get them used to, what's expected when they do see that mat, especially since at state, that's what they're going to be showing on. Plus it's a different surface. Some of the dogs don't like it. We've had dogs that have just they've got on it and wanted to chew it up. So it was a whole different training technique to get this, these dogs to not, want to basically tear it up. So there's dogs that don't like to step on it because they don't like the feel of it. So the more you can, have that opportunity, if you do have those mats, the better that the more of an advantage the kids and the dogs are going to have if you can introduce it.
Borrow it from another county.
Or yes, like my mom said, you can go ahead and borrow it. If you're looking to train on a mat, reach out to neighboring counties, borrow a mat or borrow a couple mats.
Yeah. We have mats, in our county that we have sad faces on because they have, they're not.
Yeah, we do have
fantastic
mats that are just kind of designated for training mats that aren't per se ring quality.
Right.
But we can use them for training because if the dog does decide to chew them up or, whatever, it's okay. We'll be okay with it. So, definitely, any county, feel free to reach out to neighboring counties and see if they have mats, see if they have equipment.
Yep.
Anything like that. I think most counties are more than willing to do it
and share
if you reach out.
Yep.
So I don't exactly know where Fillmore County is. I can't think of where it is off the top of my head.
We're Preston, so
It's here. Southeast
from you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We're the county to the east of Freeborn County.
Okay.
Or no, or is between us. Freeborn, Mauer, Fillmore.
Okay. So you're a little ways, but not far. You're not far.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually Albertley. I have family that lives in Albertley. So I get
there you go. You're tripping over, grab a mat.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome. I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
And I saw in the chat that Morrison County said they have lots of extra mats. So that's sort of in central Minnesota. So.
Okay, there was one that just popped up in the chat about publishing a list of counties with dog project and the contact person. We can definitely work on that as a PDC. We can work with Renee with that and kind of get that going. I agree that it would be a great resource. I know it does sometimes change often of, who's, kind of running training or their programs and whatnot, but we can definitely make a note of that and definitely see what we can do for that. So.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful to people.
Suggestion with the list, always include the local extension office, because then if the trainers do change, there's the extension office to get in touch with.
There's aren't give out the trainers information.
The extension office isn't allowed to
the extension office, a lot of times they're not allowed to give out the trainers information. They can take your name down and that trainer can contact you. but a lot of the extension offices won't give out the trainers' names. And obviously there's been issues of some sort, and that's usually the reason.
Right. No, what I meant was say, we have I'm listed as a trainer for Moore County, and I've provided that information to be given out. If I should stop, then if you have the extension office listed as an alternative contact, they can contact that and find out if there's still a dog program or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Find out
Correct.
that there's a dog program. Yep.
I want to go back to something that was asked earlier and I couldn't unmute fast enough. The question was, how do you get a dog that's on a slip lead to not sit when you're doing showmanship patterns? The other thing is to use a different command. Jessica talked about where you put the collar, but use a different command. Don't tell the dog to heel. Tell them to gait or walk or whatever, but a different command so you're not saying heel, because the expectation is at the end of heel, the dog will sit. Sorry, I couldn't get that answered.
Nope, that's very, very helpful.
Thank you for remembering and adding it.
Well, I think if there's no more questions about showmanship, maybe we could just open up, because we have some time yet, open up to general questions about the dog project, maybe some of the general rules. How do I put on a show if you're a brand new county? And I think that would be pretty helpful, because sometimes we don't always get the opportunity to talk about those things because we're always so busy focusing on a certain a certain discipline of the dog project. So does anyone have any burning questions that they want answered that we'll try to answer for you?
Is anyone putting on a fun show that like I could bring some of our kids to, that everybody in our project is brand new at this?
We in Freeborn County, we're going to be having an invitational, as we usually do have an invitational. However, it was discussed with our personal county's extension office that we are not having one this year, as it because of people coming, and this is a COVID type thing more than it is anything. Our fairgrounds is closed currently and not open to the public. So for us to be bringing people in from outside the county, and we didn't know for sure if we were going to be able to secure another location without it costing us money. So we usually do have one in Freeborn County. And then there was also some other factors within our county that we just decided that we couldn't hold one. But the biggest one being that our fairgrounds was not open, and that they wouldn't, basically we didn't want to be bringing kids in from the outside and intermixing per se. So that's kind of where we unfortunately had to make the decision. Sure. But I mean, Freeborn County, yes, usually does have one in June.
Okay.
So something reference for future down the road post COVID.
And Anoka County also is not doing a fun match this year. We have periodically in the past, but it's the same reason, due to the COVID restrictions.
Instead, so other counties may decide to do that too. So.
And then one thing that you can do instead of your invitationals, we have chose to do a in-county workshop where we will bring the kids in on that day and still do basically a mock invitational for them, or a mock show for them, so they can get used to walking the rally course. They can get used to that showmanship class format. They can get used to that obedience class format, and then they can get used to that walking the agility course and how the agility usually goes for them. So even though that you're not being invited to other counties per se, you can still ask judges or other counties trainers or other resources to come and do workshops for you and do it in county. That's another idea for you.
Yeah, good.
So do the guidelines actually prevent cross-county attendance? Say if somebody in Freeborn County wanted to come to the Moore County training just to get their dog experienced, in being around different places and stuff, is that not allowed? Or
that'd be a question for the extension staff. That was just something that, like I said, our fairgrounds is closed currently to the public, so we knew that we could not basically invite people in.
In a normal year, there is not a problem with that.
Right.
This is just a COVID issue right now.
Yeah, this is a COVID. In a normal year, I mean, we encourage you to go and get other experience. And like, there was, Renee, I'll let you, I know you're ready to jump in here. On a normal year, how do you find the invitational or fun shows? That's something that, like, I usually contact our extension office, or like our extension office does this, where they put it out to like they email it to the surrounding counties extension office, and then they get it hopefully to the trainers or to the dog project members, is what has kind of been done lately. So that's kind of how we have been getting the word out that way. Also, it's been put out on our, I believe, county Facebook page as well. Granted, no, not everybody follows that, but I know, especially since COVID has hit, a lot of the surrounding or regional extension offices have been sharing events that are happening at different counties. So that's kind of a way to kind of look at things as well. So Renee might be able to touch on that with the other comment as well. So I'll let her take over.
Yep, sorry, I just was listening, so I thought I'd jump in and be able to answer that. So right now, it's probably restricted only because of limited numbers and that pod size and not the intermingling of kids, that they aren't recommending multi-county activities at this point. And like I said, if that opens up and changes, we will change with that. But right now, they're not really recommending anything that's cross-county wide, because we don't want families and kids to be traveling. So that, and yes, and I would agree that the best way probably to advertise or know about invitationals is, and if you have a dog program and you want to know that, reach out to your extension person and make sure that they know that they should send that out to you. I would recommend that if you have things that you want to let other counties know about, or those kind of things, that you send it to your extension office and ask them, because we have a listserv where they can select what counties they want it to go to. And Facebook is a second option. So the more ways we get it out there through direct conversation and Facebook, the better chance we have of communicating that.
And like Renee was saying, like, there's some of us, and you guys will get to know more trainers and more judges around the state, whatnot. But I mean, for me, I know, several people on the PDC and in the state and train here and there. So, I mean, I'll reach out to them as well and let them know, hey, this is what's going on. We're having this within our county. Feel free to bring kids over. Or, if a judge is coming from a county, they'll let their kids know. So, direct word of mouth, the listserv is phenomenal. Like I said, like Renee said, that gets out to all the counties if you want it to. So, is there a 4-H Minnesota Dog Project Facebook site? There is not a state Facebook site, an overall state.
But that might be something we should check on when we have our PDC meeting, if that would be something, if there would be an interest, maybe that's something that could be developed.
I know we talked about it before, but it never has developed. So
what about those horse? We have a couple different Facebook groups for horse, and people follow them, so they learn, and that's one way that we send information out. But if it's something that is bigger than that, we can run that through and select that and request that that gets put on the Minnesota 4-H Facebook page too. So if you have a bigger event or want something known, or if you are opening something up, some of those opportunities we can put on the Minnesota 4-H Facebook site as well. So it doesn't have to be dog specific, but it gets out there to let anybody who is associated with that page know of an event or opportunity. And we can do that through staff can do that.
Okay, so there's a couple questions on chat here. Would it be possible to put out a list of approved collars, harnesses, and pictures for each class? Can a martingale be used, for example, can a martingale be used in showmanship? Those are already all out there. Those are in the guidebooks. It specifies they don't have the pictures with them per se, but that list is out there in the guidebook, in the rules. You know, for example, in the foundation class, you can use that gentle leader or halter, per se, if you want to call it that, or the harness, the front clip harness. So those are out there already. I know in the guidebook that we're putting out for showmanship, we will include the pictures for like an example of a martingale lead or the slip lead or the, you know, collar and lead. So those are coming. It's just so those are coming. So we will, but the list of approved collars is out there within the guidelines and within the rule books. What about the kids with the bitchin' season during the kids show? So if you have a dog that is in season, there's a couple different options, but for showmanship wise, basically you either need to show at the end of the show, and this is only for county. At state, Mom, correct me if I'm wrong, but they cannot show. At state, bitches in season are not allowed to show. For your county, you can, one option is that you can find another county show to qualify at to go to state, or if allowed and able, you can show at the end of your show as a qualifying score.
And that's it.
And that's it.
They can't place, but they can qualify.
So you basically have to show at the end of the show, separate from your class, and that's basically to qualify for state.
But that would not be for agility, correct? That would only be for obedience, rally, and showmanship. Because as far as I know, you cannot show a dog in season during agility.
Correct. So if you have a dog in season for agility, you would need to go find another county to qualify in once your dog, either before your dog comes in season, if you know that dog's season well, or after the dog is out of that season.
Another thing is that we ask that the dogs not be on the grounds because they still have that scent and you're distracting any other dog that's there. So we ask that you keep them not on the grounds until you're ready to run.
Yeah.
So it takes a little more coordination.
So if that's a situation for you, or you know of a child that's in your training program that needs that, contact your extension person and they can help coordinate through that other show. Because generally we don't allow kids to show in multiple counties, but there are these exceptions and other specific exceptions. So coordinate that with your county extension person and they can help connect you with the show that best fits that need.
Yep, absolutely. The extension office is the key part there. Yep. Contact them and then they will assist you with finding that option for you. They'll do the coordinating of that. And we've had to do it. I mean, I've had to do it. I mean, this is not something abnormal. So if you have to do it, you have to do it. I mean,
yeah. In Anoka County, we've had to find other shows for some of our kids to go to, and we've also had kids from other counties come and take part in our show due to various reasons that they couldn't go at their own county show.
And just to reiterate, just allow the youth to know that they can get that blue, red, or white if they go show at that other show. It is literally just to qualify for state. So, and that's usually what the youth are going for anyways. They're usually going for that qualification so they can show at state. So I guess if I had an option, I don't care. I do what I could to qualify to get to state. So
the main concern was with the COVID situation, because you just stated that they're not recommending cross county.
So this would be a different exception to
Yep.
that.
And that's why it's important to contact your county extension office so that they would let you know what's happening.
Of it all.
And one other thing, the dog project guide says that a dog in season is not permitted to attend training. And when they're done with being in season, they need to have a bath before they're allowed to come. But they ask that the youth still come so that they can learn what was covered and they can know what to work on when they're at home.
Okay, a question. What is the collar lead that would provide the best control for large dog, small child, and showmanship? A martingale, I know a slip collar lead is a possibility as well.
So if you're looking at the best control or the most control, it would be that slip collar and lead option. A martingale, yes, is going to give you control, but the most control you're going to get is with a slip collar and a lead. We do it a lot where we will actually use their slip collar from obedience per se, and just put a showmanship lead to that collar. So they still have the collar control, but they have a little bit lighter weight leash. But if that's not possible, then we allow them to use the leash until we can get to the dog and the youth to that point where we can use a lighter weight leash. So it's something that you'd have to try with the dog and the child team. But the slip collar and the lead is going to be your best possibility for the most control. And then there was a stud dogs are allowed, correct? Yes, stud dogs are allowed to show in 4-H.
And
yes.
Another question was, how are the kids held responsible for their dogs being in season at state? Basically, it's if they're a good sportsman and they know their dog is in heat, they should keep it at home. Mm-hmm. At the state, we do find dogs in season, and if so, they are told to leave. Anybody else on the state dog committee or the state, do you want to make a comment about?
Nope, that's basically about it. You know,
Yep.
You're on the honor system.
Yep. And if you're at state and you think there's a dog that's in season, go to the office and we check it out. There's usually a vet on site or close by, or and we do check it out. And there have been times when we have excused dogs due to that reason.
Yep. Especially if you see blood dripping.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the collar leashes for showmanship, when they're first starting, can they use like a head halter and stuff like that?
When they're first starting,
not to show, but for training, just so they have the control of the dog.
Yes, they can start with that higher control aspect of it and then wean off of that. Yes. So there's nothing saying that you don't take safety first. So if they need to start with that head halter or the gentle leader to get started in showmanship, to just, get used to what's expected of them, but they need to be actively working to wean their dog off of that.
It's just a challenge when you see a dog that actually literally outweighs the child, and he just decides he's going over there.
Yep. So that's something that needs that. Yes. I mean, they can practice with it on, but they need to be actively working on weaning them off of that to get to either a slip collar or a lead. So there is that. There was a question in chat about the Grant County participates in Douglas County's dog project for several years. Renee answered that. I mean, that's a county to county thing, and that's what they're used to. And that's what it is. So
right. That would be between, I would say that the Grant County and the Douglas County Extension offices need to be in conversation with that to let know. But if it's been something happening, but that would be between the two extension offices.
Yep. So basically, if you have COVID related questions, definitely contact your extension office. They're gonna know. And if they have a question on it, they know who to reference and who to go to. So yes, and all this is new to everybody, so just be patient as everything. And like Renee said, this whole youth mask thing just changed Thursday, I think it was, no, Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I mean, everything is evolving still, so just be patient as we work through another year of protocols that's nobody knows. So
I'm just excited that we can do in-person training and shows this year, because it was so fun to see the kids the other night and the parents, and the kids have really grown. I haven't seen them for a year and a half.
And maybe Renee can answer this question, but make sure that you check with your extension office, because you might have to, for the in-person dog training, you still might have to fill out that COVID protocol information, because I know I had to do that for Anoka County.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, please, if you're the lead trainer in your county, please reach out to Extension, because there are specific training that we need volunteers to do. And we do have to request an exemption for any in-person opportunities, which is super simple, but it's got to run through the chain and follow, so that we ensure that people are trained in the protocol and know what to expect. It's super simple. It takes 24 hours to get, generally takes 24 hours to get the approval back. So before any in-person, there is an exemption process. So just connect with your extension person to get that working. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's not anything that you'll be responsible for spending hours creating a protocol. It's there. We just need to train people on it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that our lead trainer contacted the extension office and they filed the exemption for the entire training season. So it's not something that needs to be like redone continually and constantly. And I would guess that the best way to find out if someone has, quote, the COVID training would be to contact your extension office, because we have a couple of former members that I'm not certain would have the COVID training.
Yep, we do need to have that exemption and have that approval before any in-person opportunities can take place. But it's super simple, and you can do it for your entire training season. So you don't have to do it for each week, and it's a one-time thing. So simple, just connect with your extension and they can get that done for you if you haven't already done it.
All right, any other questions? Anybody have questions on how to put together a dog show, or how to get started with training if you're a new county, or anything else? As long as it doesn't pertain, I mean, we could probably go into some of the other areas, but each area has its own area.
Yeah, so we'll stick to showmanship and general shows.
In general shows, yeah.
In general, kind of open up to that guidebook area.
How do you get people to volunteer to help? Because they want to watch their child show, so I can't help.
So one thing that has been put into place with that should help is that we now use cones in the obedience ring. So honestly, in my opinion, no parent has an excuse that they can't help at ringside, because of the fact that they will not be required to enter the ring for the figure eight or anything like that. So they can help at the ring that they're, or the next ring per se, because they don't have to go into the ring. In our county, we require that they help at two different things. And blatantly, if they want the project to go forward, we need volunteers. They need to help. But yeah, we don't, our adults are very good. And if they don't want to help there's a family member that's designated to help. So I guess our county is really good and we don't usually have a problem with it. So I don't know, other counties can pipe in.
A lot of parents say they don't want to help because their kids don't want them close to the ring because it distracts the dog. If the parents are at every training session, the dog learns that they have to work with the child, even though the parent's there. So make sure that the parents are staying, that they're close when you're doing training, so that they don't have that excuse because the dog is used to them being there. I know when my kids were in 4-H, I was in the ring for everything. I was in there scribing for agility. I was in as a post. I was always around, and the dogs never looked at me when my kids were in the ring, because they knew that the relationship was between them and the person, the child that was training them.
Okay, another question regarding the showmanship rules. It says in the new rules, it indicates distractive grooming. Does this mean distractive grooming during the show? It's under the deductions section.
Yep. So that part is actually in the ring. There are some breeds that you can kind of like, or even use your hands and fingers to like straighten out their hair and stuff. And that's kind of where we're talking about is, you want to be discreet and distinct about that, and, not make it excessive. So that's kind of more what we're talking about is in the ring of actually correcting and grooming your dog, and straightening that coat out for them. At most of your dog shows, you shouldn't be grooming by the areas anyways. Most, I shouldn't say, I believe most, especially up at state and like in the buildings, you're required to go outside the building to do any type of grooming and whatnot. So I guess in all reality, you shouldn't be doing any type of grooming by the show ring anyways. But the distractive grooming is referred to in the ring. So if you're taking this comb out or brush out all the time and constantly doing it, you're going to be distracting. So if that answers the question there.
A lot of that refers to outside of 4-H, because there are some people who show outside of 4-H who want to be able to groom because that's what they do outside of 4-H. And it's more of a habit. So we want to make sure for those kids, we do allow it, but we don't want it to be excessive, and we don't want the whole class to start feeling like they need to do it because, hey, this person who does really well does it.
And then there was a message on here about the exemption. What was the exemption for? So that is for your county training as a whole. It's a protocol that the extension office has to do. And they handle all of it. And then you as a trainer or the head trainer will be notified of that exemption. But like Renee was saying, it basically indicates that you have gone through like the trainings and the protocols and I should say know what's going on with COVID, and that this is happening, because you got to keep track to make sure things are followed, protocols are followed of the hand sanitizing, and the pods aren't intermingling if you have enough numbers and whatnot. So definitely that's something for your training to actually start. Like I know our 4-H club also has to have an exemption to hold an in-person meeting. So it is for those in-person events that you need to have that exemption filled out for. So hopefully that answers that question for you.
Back to the grooming issue, that's because other than the motion being distracting and stuff like that, if there's loose hair and stuff like that, if that gets in the ring, then obviously that's going to be distracting for the dogs that are following the dog that was groomed and stuff like that. And that's just not sportsmanship.
We're not expecting them to be grooming to the point of getting hair. It's more of the hair got messed up. Maybe the lead pulled it and they want to just straighten it out. Anything where they're removing hair, I would think would be considered excessive, and they should be docked for that.
Okay. Any deduction if someone dyes their dog's hair beforehand? I guess I don't know if there's per se a real way to tell that.
Well,
I definitely know what you're talking about.
Probably if you have a white poodle and they come in pink.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know why you would want to do it, but I guess that's not breed standard, you know, so.
But
Yeah,
showmanship is about judging how the handler handles the dog, and
Yeah.
it's not about the dog's physical appearance.
Right, so
I'm
I
not
guess
sure
there's,
we can do anything about that.
yeah. So, I mean, the only thing is, you know, when it comes to that aspect is, you know, if they have hair in their eyes, there is requirements, you know, of how much, you know, how they can put that hair back and whatnot. But when it comes to actually dyeing hair, since it's not, you know, since we judge on the child per se, I don't think there can be any deductions actually made. So.
As long as we don't think that's a color that's for their breed.
Yeah. So hopefully that answered that. No, I totally get it. There's, you know, and I guess I don't know if other people show outside of species, but I mean, I do understand, you know, there are species that, you know, kind of want to get that correct color. So but yeah, in dogs, I guess that's for showmanship wise, that wouldn't be relatable, I guess, per se for us. So, and we're not breeding on this, on the conformation or the standards of the breed. So if that makes sense.
I have a question with us starting up, kind of just really getting going more this year. We are planning on focusing just on obedience and showmanship. Would it be better for us to start with rally, something that's maybe a little easier for the kids to pick up on, or should we just stick with, we can't do everything yet, you know, because I have to get through a couple of years of obedience first, but I guess I didn't look into that.
That would cost a lot of money.
Personal opinion, I would stick to obedience and showmanship.
Okay.
Your rally requires your basic obedience, and that's kind of what you want to focus on.
Okay.
And basically you're going to convert that basic obedience over to your rally stations. Yes, rally is more of a fun aspect of obedience. So yes, it's, you know, can give them a little bit more excitement, but you're also looking at the cost of the rally, depending upon what route you take. Cause I mean, you know, if, you know, I guess we did buy like a starter rally pack in the beginning. I mean, I don't remember how much, I mean, that was, I mean, it's quite a bit, and I'm sure it's gone up since we bought it years ago, but,
and our extension office made.
Yeah, and our extension office made the signs, and laminated them for us. So, I mean, that was a huge, you know, deduction there, when it comes to that. So in all honesty, I guess my opinion is to start with the obedience, because you'll need that basic foundation. And then starting with showmanship, I always like I said, we require it in our county for first years, just because that gives them the knowledge of, you know, what their dog's health, their dog breed, their, which they should know.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would wait on rally, because you're going to be able to convert over that, but without the basic foundation of obedience, you need that first, I guess, in my opinion.
Okay,
So.
that's what we were planning on starting with, and then I'm like, well, they might have more fun doing some of the rally. Just trying to keep it fun and keep them excited.
Don't get me wrong, you can take, you know, you can look up the rally signs and incorporate some of that into your obedience stuff, for fun, to add more fun.
Yeah.
I want to concur with Jessica, because consider obedience as a life skill. So rally is not that same life skill that obedience is for a dog.
And
yeah.
When I do the obedience section later, part of the things that I'm mentioning is incorporating different rally parts into training to keep it more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we did as far as the signs was we just printed them off in, you know, like black and white, and used the sheet protectors with a piece of cardstock behind it.
That works perfectly. Black and white
And
is
you-
perfectly acceptable.
And you can, and you can use those because it does give them, like you said, it introduces the fun aspect of it. And the beginning signs for rally are like the basic obedience things where it's kind of like stop, sit, right turn, left turn, about turn. So.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
And we honestly had kids that wanted to practice their rally signs at home that have honestly drawn their own. So they took it upon themselves that they just wanted to draw it, and hey, more power to them if they want to use their time to draw the rally signs for them to have at home. Awesome.
Okay, go ahead, Denise.
And showmanship is also an excellent thing to start, because with showmanship, what I found in my county is a lot of the good showmanship kids, that's where I draw my knowledgeable kids from. And so the really gung-ho showmanship kids will, once you get to the point where you want to start a knowledgeable team, those are the kids that will be very interested.
Yeah. Where I'm planning on doing, starting off with just the basic obedience and the showmanship, but then incorporating like asking them the questions, starting to get them into that. We're going to try to play some games. I'm planning on having like fun size candy to reward the kids when they're doing all the stuff that we're supposed to be doing. That
Wonderful.
Encourage them.
Entirely encourage.
We're going to just sit, stay, heal, all the stuff that they need to learn that, but just drilling on that by itself gets boring. So trying to, come up with different games and stuff we can play that they can play with their dogs at home. That's going to encourage.
Good. You'll love obedience.
Okay, back to another showmanship question. It says, what are the correct teeth to show in bite?
Oh yes. So I did see that, but yes. So the front teeth are the ones that get shown. Now, faults can be, or deductions can be given if you show more than that. So it should only be those front.
Teach your kids not to stick their heads down and look at the bite.
Yes.
Stay back so the judge can see the bite. So that's one.
Yes, exactly. So when you do show the bite, you should pull the front part off or front part up apart like Carl was doing, and then you need to you should angle that up towards the judge. So your face is out of the way, but you need to turn it to actually present it to the judge. Like I said, you're actually presenting it to them.
So if the judges say slightly to the left from center, you don't want to just present the bite straight forward. You want to move their head a little sideways so the judge can get a direct view of it.
Correct. Yep. The judge should always have a correct view of that bite without the kid's head in the way. Yeah. And that's something that they have to practice. Dogs don't like that done. I can't iterate enough. You need to have your kids practice showmanship. Showmanship needs to be practiced. Especially, stacking their feet, touching their feet.
For showmanship, they stated earlier that courtesy turns are optional, but beneficial.
Right.
But in the minor deductions, it says poorly performed courtesy turns for the minor. Would you suggest that if the kids can't perform a courtesy turn correctly, they should not do it, or what?
It depends on how bad it is. Now, remember earlier I said that a judge can change a minor to be more severe if it's done very badly. So it's generally a minor because most bad courtesy turns aren't that off mark. But if it's where they don't know what they're doing, they turn backwards, they're not lined up at all, it's just very badly, remember that could become a major. So
Correct.
if they are really close, personally, I would say try it, because they're not going to learn how to do it correctly if they don't try it. They might do it really well. Something might click, especially if they're watching the people in front of them and they say, oh, I'm supposed to be here, or it's okay for the dog to be, for me to be in the way of the judge's view of the dog. And I shouldn't rush through that part. You know, sometimes they do it really well and they just figure it out. So if they're pretty good at it, personally, I would recommend that they try it. It may not apply today, but I think the other thing about showmanship and questions is that those are life skills too. I know when I ask questions, I like to ask questions that are medical and that make them think. So I don't want them to just repeat an answer, but to tell me that they know and understand something. And so I think playing those games like that is going to give them that knowledge that they need, that's going to help them in life. It's going to help with that relationship with their dog. And also, like Denise said, it's going to help with dog bowl. And if you look in the guidebook, it does say the dogs need to know this. They need to know breed, they need to know group, they need to know where they came from, they need to know vaccinations, parasites, things like that. You'll always get something like that at county. Always tell them not to be afraid to say, can you explain that question? Can you repeat that question? Because a lot of kids will go, I don't know. And then they'll be like, kids will go, I don't know. And then they'll be like, well, that's not what I heard you say. I know that. That's simple. So they need to, you know, because they are nervous. I get that. And so if they don't know something, you know, don't be afraid to say, I didn't catch that. One other thing we did for Dog Bowl, and this applies too for showmanship, is give them the resources and have them write their own questions. Because then they can ask each other, and and then they all learn from it. They learn from reading the book, they learn from writing the question out, and then they learn from having to listen to someone else ask them a question they've never seen or heard before. Someone else ask them a question they've never seen or heard before.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
because I know, like,
what our did too. And that's the thing, along that line of having them write their own questions. Have your county kids start compiling a list of the questions that they've been asked by judges in the ring.
For rainy days, I've also made what I consider a grab bag of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like for all the deductions, you know, because I think it's important for them to know that also, so they have a better understanding if that happens.
One other thing we did, especially like they are tired, or you're maybe having a bad day, or you're running late because obedience ran long, whatever, we used to just sit down with the dogs and throw out questions. And it was like, I don't know, like Jeopardy or whatever, where the first person who could answer got to answer it. And it teaches them to react quickly to answer those questions. And it gets them grilled into their mind.
Ask the next question off of that, like that person that answered the fastest can ask the next question. So then they have to think of to ask the kids.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of trickles from there.
Awesome.
Another thing is you can have them do it wrong and have the rest of your class, and Erica, this is kind of to you, have the rest of the class explain what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah, what my mom was saying is have one person, you know, plant somebody doing something wrong and then go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been trying to teach at least the advanced kids that anybody that has a big dog who may end up at like the front of the line for gating, that when the judge is asking for group gating, that they should turn and ask the youth behind them if they are ready. Is this a good thing or a bad thing to do?
That is a good thing. So that front person is basically in charge of leading that group gating. So they should stand up, ask the person behind them if they're ready, and then they should also be scanning down the line to see and make sure that everybody is getting up and getting moving.
And also they really need to listen very, very carefully, because I've had some when I've told them to go around the ring one time and they go around 2 and then 3, and it's just like they're waiting for me to tell them to stop. So they're really have to be very responsible and be listening to what that judge says.
And that's true for anybody. There are times when we do individual gating where maybe the line goes, like you're looking at the corner of the mat and it covers 2 of those mats. And I don't want them gating all the way back to that youth. So I'll say, go halfway down that back mat. Maybe this is an L pattern. I'll say, go halfway back, and they will go all the way to the end to where that last child has their dog stacked. And it's a distraction to both of them. So I say, stop halfway. And if they don't, they haven't followed the judge's orders. That's a fault.
And it's not only, back to the big dog question, it's not only that big dog. They may get into a situation where you've got a smaller dog, maybe a smaller lab or an Australian Shepherd or something, and all of a sudden they're the first ones in the front of the line. And so you really need to teach all the kids all the way down, because you never know when they're going to be the front ones in the line.
Yep. So it technically gets taught of whoever is first in line. That first person in line is the one in charge of doing, like, these are your expectations of, you know, making sure you're listening to the judge correctly. Well, that's anybody, but especially them with group gating, and then making sure that they ask the person behind them and then scan down that line. And some judges, I mean, if they really want to, they put the smallest dog in.
We don't try
Well,
to
we
do
don't
that.
try to do it, but I mean, say that you only had small dogs in the ring.
I've done that at state. I've had first ring was big dogs and second ring was small dogs. So
Yeah.
it could be a small dog leading.
Yep. And all of a sudden you're there. About myself. Stop.
So would it
Not
be a good idea to practice switching the size of the dogs around so they learn to really watch for their spacing?
You don't want to per se switch the dogs around, because that's way too hard on the kids and the dogs to even get them. They just need to practice their spacing. You could mix what people you have in your groups, right, but I wouldn't put like a small dog and then a big dog and small dog. Like, I would just switch up your members in your group.
Yeah, because you don't want those dogs right away to know, okay, we're going to go into a showmanship ring and I'm going to have a big dog biting at my heels. You don't want them to have that scare or terror for a lot of those small dogs already for the class, you know, and they're already leery of what's going to happen to them the second they get into that show ring. So you don't want to put them in that situation.
But conversely, you do have that when you're doing group gating and you have the big dog, they go around 2 times and the big dog comes close to that small dog. So it is important to teach that big dog, one, to stay behind the judge and make sure they have enough space so that the judge is actually able to see them, not see them running up on that small dog, but also respect for that small dog space and make sure they're leaving that 3 dog space between them and the small dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I just wonder, because I've had it happen where a judge won't reorder the class before they come into the ring. The class has to come into the ring and then they'll reorder the dogs by size, aka speed sometimes. And what about then? You know, what if we have a small dog that gets, you know, has the owner's last name is at the front of the alphabet and all the other dogs that are up there are big dogs?
Well, that
What
judging
then?
doesn't start until after they're already reordered.